Wow, I'm a little shell-shocked right now. Truth be told, I don't think anyone anticipated this sort of a performance from the US men's national team today. Obviously, there is a lot of nuance to this discussion because on one hand it was incredible, but simultaneously so much went wrong, particularly in that second half. However, we got to take a step back first because coming into this tie, there was so much pressure from the home team, the host nation. Were they going to step up for the occasion or were they going to crumble on the world stage? We saw Mexico 2 days prior deliver a really promising performance. Not incredible, but a promising, strong start to the tournament from a host team. Then earlier today, we saw Canada. Again, they weren't incredible, but they stepped up, showed a lot of heart, and were able to come from behind and get a result. But this match, wow, I anticipated this was going to be a very close game. Paraguay are no chumps after all. Throughout qualifying, they conceded the second most goals of any South American team. And whilst they only scored 14 goals, they weren't a particularly strong team offensively speaking. This same group of players defeated the likes of Brazil, world champions Argentina, and Uruguay. So they were not to be taken lightly. But the USA today, they were pretty damn spectacular. Starting with the lineup itself, and look, there was a lot of talk about how they were going to set up. Is it going to be a 3-4-3, a 4-2-3-1? In the end, they went for the exact same lineup as when they faced Germany. The only difference was that Chris Richards came into the side, which wasn't particularly surprising. He's a key player in this team, was coming back into full fitness. So for the US, it's great that he's come back and he was phenomenal today. But onto the starting 11 itself. And yeah, let me tell you right now, this is not a 3-4-3 or a 4-2-3-1. Defensively, yes, they do tend to operate in a back four with Robinson on the left side, Reams, Richards, and then Freeman on the right. But going forward, particularly in that first half, that is some of the most attack-minded shape you're likely to see at this tournament. They literally played with a back two in the first half, with Robinson as a wing-back, Freeman playing in that right wing-back, but also drifting into central midfield role, Dest playing as a right winger, with Malik in an inside forward role, obviously Pulisic on the left. But what I find most compelling about this team is how they utilize Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie. Both very different in their role to the team, but equally essential as the cog in the machine of this side. Tyler Adams, he is the man that holds it down, but his technical ability is so underrated. There's a reason he's frequently linked with the big clubs because he has everything in his game. You know, technically phenomenal. He does the basics really well. His tackling's great. His interceptions, his intelligence. He's a phenomenal player. He's the type of player that gives you an 8 out of 10 every single week. Weston McKennie, wow, that performance today was extraordinary in my opinion. For me, I think that was one of the best individual performances we've seen at the entire tournament. Maybe the best in terms of how much of a role he played today. This guy was everywhere. He was popping up in the 10. He was coming in deep. He was moving out wide. I don't even know how to define his role because he plays like a central midfielder, but also as a free roaming playmaker of sort going forward. Having watched Pochettino for years at Chelsea, I wasn't particularly fussed with his methods, but today, from what I saw in that first half, wow, this team is a problem. With everyone at full strength, they look the real deal. They really do. Which brings me no joy to say this as a Socceroos fan, but you know, gotta give credit where credit's due. That was a 10 out of 10 first half performance. Paraguay, on the other hand, oh my days. And look, I'm not sure if that's just the case of you were outclassed by a team full of confidence on home soil with hundreds of millions of fans around the country cheering in for the USA. Maybe that was just psychologically too daunting of a proposition on the day for Paraguay and they crumbled. But I am led to believe that their failures today were not due to, you know, being terrible or anything like that. No, America was just so much better, at least in the first half. And I keep mentioning the first half because at halftime, the USA are 3-0 to the good. Christian Pulisic down that left flank has caused all sorts, right? He's set up 2 goals. He's absolutely cooked the fullback. Balogun is flying, finding the back of the net and then banging one in on his left foot. The confidence to pull that off. Are you kidding me? It's one of those Suarez type goals. He didn't need to put it that top bins. That was like an unnecessarily brilliant goal. Too much top corner for that goal. But at 3-0 at halftime, the game is essentially wrapped up, which is why perhaps Pochettino made the decision to take off Pulisic. But this is where the game then does a complete 180, because instead of replacing him with the ample attacking players that he has at his service, the likes of Aronson, Reina, Weah, who else is there, Zendejas, or perhaps another striker, what he instead does is replaces Pulisic with Berhalter, who is a central midfielder who actually operated as a 6. Now granted, Paraguay made a substitution of their own on halftime, taking off Bobadilla and bringing in Mauricio, a more attacking-minded central midfield. So that was a bold call, because at 3-0 they were getting absolutely walloped. But Pochettino's decision to place Pulisic with a central midfielder completely altered the equation. It inadvertently changed the entire dynamic of the game. They brought that pressure on themselves in the second half, and as a result, it was a night and day difference. Paraguay in that second half were neck and neck the entire game. In the end, it finishes 4-1, which is baffling if you watch the first half, because it was literally men against boys. So that's something for Pochettino to think about. As for Pulisic's injury, if you're a fan of the US, you're praying that this was just load management and that he took him off at halftime knowing the game was finished. But at this stage, I don't know the circumstances surrounding that substitution. I'm assuming it was load management related, because at the 70-minute mark, he then took off Balogun for Pepe. Now, Paraguay did find a way back into this contest. Mauricio, the substitute, getting onto the score sheet after a really well-worked move where Enciso picked up the ball on the edge of the box, found him perfectly, slotted it home first time. Really good finish, and from there on, Paraguay held their own. The US weren't terrible, but having played so outstandingly in the first half, you can't help but wonder, how did they drop off to the degree that they did? Although, like the first half, they were able to finish the game off in style, with substitute Gio Reyna picking up the ball on the edge of the box, doing his best Ricardo Quaresma impression to close out the show. A fitting end to a great day at the office. Look, I don't know what Pochettino had envisioned the night before, but if you gave him the option of a 4-1 victory in advance, he'd almost certainly take it. I think it's a result that they can really look to build on in this group. They've got 2 massive games coming up. Obviously, coming up against the world's greatest side, the Socceroos, baby. Yeah, I'm actually kind of terrified off the back of that performance. But then they're going to follow that up with a game against Turkey. Many think that's going to be the definitive tie to see who comes out on top. Let's slow down a bit first, okay? I don't want to be disrespecting the Socceroos, just quietly. Don't forget, we finished second in the 2022 World Cup, defeating the likes of Denmark and Tunisia. Give us some credit. But yeah, ultimately, man, job done. 3 points picked up. Again, I don't know about the injuries, but by all accounts, it doesn't appear that there's anything too serious with Pulisic. Well, only time will tell there. As for Paraguay, gee, that's got to be a humbling result. I think they'll be very disappointed. No doubt this team would have had higher expectations going into this tie. I'd say they would have been quietly confident of getting a result today, but that's not what happened. They have been humbled by the US. I think the world has kind of been humbled by the US, which is something no one wants. There's a lot of, in terms of all the teams to hate watch, a lot of people want to see the US underperform, but bad news. That is not the case. If I'm being overly critical, I just wonder why Pochettino made the decision to not replace with a like-for-like player with Pulisic, because the difference was night and day. I think the other thing to be slightly nervy about if you are a US fan is sure, your starting 11 is phenomenal. I think going forward, you have a lot of options. Pepe comes in. He's a good player. Reina came in, scored a goal. Weah came in, almost scored. But without Pulisic, it's definitely a far less menacing forward line. But more importantly, I think this is the biggest issue. If Tyler Adams or Weston McKennie picks up a suspension or gets injured, you are looking at a drastically different dynamic entirely. These two cover so much ground. They have such a great understanding of one another, their rotations, their understanding of each other on the pitch. I don't think Berhalter or anyone can effectively replace what they do. Same thing defensively. I think without Chris Richards, it's a little suspect at the back. Reams just isn't that quick. But hey, maybe I'm being overly critical. As far as opening games go, well done the US, man. I gotta give credit where credit's due. It brings me no joy to glaze the US, but hey, in 2026, they look a real menacing threat. I think a lot of people will have had their minds blown today, just quietly. Anyways, guys, if you enjoyed this match review, please feel free to like, subscribe, tune into my DMAC dailies if you haven't already. We're going to be covering 2 games tomorrow, I believe, with Brazil, Morocco, and then, of course, the big one, the greatest game of all, baby, Australia versus Turkey. A lot to be excited for. And yeah, man, 2 days into the World Cup, and so much has already happened. Anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.